Alright, so we have an interesting topic to discuss this time. This time we can get everybody involved, especially the viewers. What we have an issue here with when it comes to this game Allods, there's actually an event called Astral Confrontations, and as a lot of people are aware, the mechanics are completely broken, and to our knowledge, the GMs are completely stuck as to what to do. Basically, they don't know what to do. So this is kind of a good opportunity for you as the players to kind of discuss basically how do we fix this. So just a brief background. Essentially in this game there's a lot of player versus player elements, and a lot of people complain obviously that one of the negatives in this game that it is quote pay to win in a lot of aspects. And as you can see here, just as an example, the way this Astral Confrontation works is you have different guilds essentially fighting for an Allod. So it's basically in a guild versus guild environment. And the way the system works is guilds have to actually bid on an Allod in order to attack it. So it could be, for example, Guild A bids 100 gold and Guild B bids 100, so they would have to duke it out essentially to see who the winner is. Now unfortunately that's not how it works currently, because what happens is people would create, for example, these phony accounts or phony guilds, and they would actually be bidding against themselves. So in a sense, they're not fighting anybody, and they're just basically reaping the rewards. Now in our view, this is an abusive mechanic, and for a lot of people, they continue to do it because the GMs simply don't know what to do. Is that correct, guys?
Yeah, definitely, man.
Here's an example of an empty bid right now. Nobody is bidding. So as you can see, even with us when we're looking at this Muzza, all of a sudden we have this guild called Disturb bid on us, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we basically thought, in the spirit of the game, normally if a guild bids on you, then they're kind of proposing a challenge. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna bid on Disturb. So as you can see, the timer is kind of ticking down, and normally what would happen is if you get challenged by another guild, they would bid on it too. But as you can see here, there's going to be a guild here called Deathly Immortals that bid on top of us, and on top of that another guild called Reborn, which is actually owned by the same guild in order to avoid a fight.
For someone to come in and challenge a group of people, and then when they feel threatened by that challenge, they go into, okay, I'm gonna have to dodge this bullet basically, and that's when I get really edgy about it, you know, when the gold or the abuser system come in, and that's really what's been happening since, oh my god, whatever basically. So again, I mean, the reason they doing it, they obviously, some guilds don't have the number, or they greedy, they just want to obtain as much as possible from the abuse. So I'll let Mazu explain more about it if you want, Maz. So.
Well, I was just going to give my own perspective. But personally, I feel cheated because AC has to be, in my opinion, the best PvP the game has to offer. You've got checkpoints which need to be captured, certain points which you want to hold to have an advantage. It can be a very dynamic fight and a lot of fun. But these people basically stop you from fighting, stop themselves from fighting, stop everyone from fighting, stop the competition completely, just by throwing gold at it. And it really isn't how the system is supposed to work, and it takes a lot away from the fun of the game.
One guild that's notorious for it this past week, I think, bid a total of like 176,000 gold, safety bidding all of their bids, so they didn't have any fights. And I mean, that's just not what AC was designed for. It's a PvP element of a game that is PvP centered, and I just wish if people didn't want to PvP so badly, why don't they go play Hello Kitty Island or something?
Let's establish one thing first. Now, as you can see here that we're reading here in terms of the guidelines, in terms of Allods in general, as we can see here in terms of exploiting, essentially taking advantage of any part of the game beyond what was obviously designed for. Now in your guys' mind, is there any question that this is not an exploit, for example, or is this quote the intent of the game where you create fake guilds just to bid yourself so you don't have to fight?
From my viewpoint, it for sure is an exploit. I think a lot of people have made the point before that it's like CG trading, and that obviously GMs cracked down very hard on that when it used to happen.
People can basically pay real life money to avoid the fight. It's almost like walking into the arena as someone wanting to fight you and handing them $1 every time so that you don't have to fight them. It just doesn't make sense. We know that that's not what the arena say was designed for, and it's certainly not what Astral Confrontation was designed for.
Now, just to paraphrase a little bit, as expressed in the beginning of the videos, essentially, to our understanding, the GMs have no idea what they can do to fix this problem, because essentially, the game itself doesn't have a way to determine exactly what is a quote alt guild owned by the same guild doing this, and at the same time they're kind of expressing it's hard for them to make a judgment call in order to determine, okay, this is the guild that we should punish because they're doing this. So I would kind of go in the same thing though, like for example with the quote CG trading and how they enforce that. How did they enforce that initially? In my opinion, am I not mistaken, as in they manually policed it, for example? They look at the log reports just to see who's just standing there and just allowing themselves to get killed as they level up, for example. Is it not the same thing? What do you guys think?
Well, I think they've got systems in place to manage with it. Yeah, we talk about the CG trading. There's been other exploits such as the mount speed bug, which I know they use, the Astral Scholars, which we have in game, which are in-game players who, talk to the GMs. And they would sort of pass on to the GMs names of people who are exploiting. The only issue in this case is the Astral Scholars, I'm not going to say all of them, but probably a good majority, are involved in doing this bid protecting. So whether or not that's a viable way to go about monitoring it and reporting who is exploiting it, or if other sort of player representatives need to be brought in, I don't know, but it can certainly easily be monitored and the information passed along.
Now, one thing I'll bring up again, as we said before, this game is not very large in terms of a population, so in that sense, it shouldn't be too hard to determine who owns what account, for example, or which guild. And just for me to use like the most easy examples here, I'm just using here an example last week of a guild that bid almost 80k, for example, go to quote bid protect so they can avoid the fight. And these two names of the guilds here are really similar, so it's kind of really obvious to determine that this is like the same people, for example. At the same time, I think if you browse through the forums, as you can see here, some people just openly say, for example, everybody does it, or this is kind of hilarious in some ways, I find. Some person here is saying the Astral Confrontation here wasn't meant for PvP, it was to just get, real guard. I mean, does that not make it obvious that people are openly exploiting this, and you have so much proof as it is right here in order to enforce like action?
I have no clue. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they scared. Maybe they. It's mouth. I'm not sure how they allowing it, to be honest.
GMs, because they don't play the game, haven't tried to gear up. I'd say if you sent a GM and told them, hey, go upgrade to Myth Gear, they might then realize how valuable these resources are, and maybe realize why people are willing to exploit so blatantly.
One thing I personally find a little ironic is in this game in general, I've often heard people complain there's not enough endgame content or player versus player. Like for example, people just, they're not into the mood to actually player versus player, which is one of the most fun aspects of the game. Yet you have situations like this where people openly, exploit it, which discourages those type of activities. So aren't things like this stuff that you want to fix, for example, in order to encourage more player base and more activity? I mean, it seems like the common sense thing, isn't it?
I mean, I've been hammering them about this issue for some time now, and I also spoken to some of the Astral Scholar. One of the Astral Scholar told me they brought up this issue to them, to the GMs or the developer or whatnot, or what developer implemented is the new system, which is this one now, like the 2 guild bidding system. But I mean, honestly, what were you thinking when you implemented that? You made it even, it didn't change anything, it's just like nothing.
The approach the GMs have been taking at the moment doesn't really look like they're too interested in the problem right now. There's been a lot of communication, there hasn't been any signal on their part that they are willing or wanting to do something about it. I mean, maybe in the future we'll see something happening, because it clearly is an abuse, and if it's brought to their attention and it's a more obvious way for them, they will start talking to the community and thinking about solutions, but for now we haven't seen that happening.
Well, that's why we did this, because basically, as mentioned, it's expressed to us they don't know how, but they want us to basically highlight it a little more. So what can we leave them with at the end? What is the temporary solution you guys can think of to, temporarily fix the issue, so to speak?
From my opinion, is a simple warning system would be enough. The same as has happened with every other bug or abusive glitching or any other game mechanic which has been abused. It's been a simple issue warnings for multiple warnings. There's some action taken against the account, and I think people knowing that if they do it, there will be, at least possibly be some punishment or repercussion for the action, then that could stop it. But I mean, they need to do something.
If they come up with a warning, you're looking at a huge group of people that will be basically, if everyone does it, they cannot ban us all, let's start throwing the system type of thing. And that's when the what do you call it, I can't remember the word, government is that, like, yeah, something like that, never mind.
I have no idea what you're trying to say.
Me neither.
It's like the way I look at it, we are like the people in here, and the GMs that like govern the system, like, and they are the government. So if someone basically trying to outthrow the government, what do you think the government's gonna do? In some society, they will shoot them down, but that's some society, so.
It sounds like you've been watching some movies or something. You've got some totally different ideas in your mind.
No, it's like
I would say the first thing to solving the problem is they should just openly say, for example, that they recognize there's an issue, and that they will be screening to see whether or not people are abusing the mechanics. And if they're saying, for example, the system itself does not allow them to determine, who's abusing the mechanics and who isn't, I mean, isn't that why they have volunteers, for example, like those Astral Scholars in this game? Like, they should be in tune with the community to see who is doing that, for example. And it's not too hard, in my opinion. I mean, you as a GM can easily go into the preliminary matches, for example. Are there 2 guilds that are actually fighting each other? Or is there just one guy going there looting chests and then giving to their main guilds afterwards? Or same thing during the actual AC confrontation, like the actual final battle, are there actively people like fighting each other? Or is it just there's no one there in the Allod? I mean, it should be pretty easy to determine it. Now, it just comes down to the willingness on whether or not they want to act on it, in my opinion. So we leave that to you, the viewers, too. What do you guys think? What should be done? How do you think it should be fixed? Leave your comments below. Just describe your opinions and so forth, and we can probably have like a healthy discussion about it too. Other than that, I guess we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.